So, Asha, how much trouble is Elon Musk in?
Eh, it's complicated. I'm Asha Rangappa. I teach national security law at Yale University. I'm a former FBI special agent, and I'm a legal contributor for ABC News.
And I'm Renato Mariotti. I'm a former federal prosecutor, a practicing lawyer, and a legal analyst.
And we're here to help you understand topics that can't be boiled down into a soundbite or a tweet. So, I don't even know where to start.
Yes, I should note I apologize to everyone for taking a week off. I was in the middle of a jury trial and I had to put my client on the stand and do my closing argument and all that. So it was a busy week. And now
I was in Bali.
Yeah, okay. Even better excuse as far as I'm concerned. Maybe for the end of the episode, we could talk a little bit about that. So while we've been away, Elon Musk has been getting himself into all sorts of complicated problems. I'm curious what your thought is in the first one. Asha, the one that's probably more complicated. I don't know which one's more complicated, but more it's certainly interesting. It's got a lot of coverage. This election law violation, or apparent election law violation.
Yeah, so Musk has this scheme, maybe scam. I don't know what you want to call it. But basically, he has a petition that people can sign and enter essentially a sweepstakes, $1 million sweepstakes. He's going to pick one petition signer at random to win $1 million every day until the election. The thing is, the petition is for in support of the First and Second Amendments, which is not necessarily, there's nothing legally problematic about that, except that is likely to attract Republican leaning people. More problematic is that you can only sign the petition if you are a registered voter in a swing state. And I think that many election law experts, including Rick Hazen, who I think is one of the top experts, has said this is basically a bribe. This is an illegal lottery scheme that runs afoul of the law.
That's right. I mean, it's very, very clear under the law that if, for example, you pay somebody to register to vote, that's a crime. All right, straight up. And the guidance that the Justice Department has given is that lottery schemes are essentially the same thing. Because instead of paying you $100 to register to vote, what I'm saying is I'll give you a 1 in a million chance to win $1 million or whatever, or 1 in 100,000 chance, or 1 in 10,000 chance to win $1 million. And essentially what it is it has a value, just like a lottery ticket would have a value. This is a chance to potentially win a very large amount of money. So it's essentially giving a thing of value to someone in exchange for them registering to vote, a clear violation of election law. And then the interesting thing is, Asha, okay, people are saying, well, this is a clear violation of the law. Is he going to be prosecuted? And he gets a letter from the Justice Department. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. So a little bit of background, I remember not too long ago, was it in 2020, that Ben & Jerry's was giving away free ice cream to anyone who showed up in the shop with their "I've voted" sticker. And that raised all of this controversy because that was in violation of these election laws, because basically, even though they were giving this free ice cream cone after you voted, it could be an inducement to vote, right? So we're talking about an ice cream cone. It doesn't even have to be, it's a thing of value. I mean, I guess an ice cream cone is worth whatever at Ben & Jerry, $7. But the relevant provisions here are 52 USC 10307C. So this is from the election law blog. So this is whoever pays or offers to pay or accepts payment either for registration to vote or for voting shall be fined not more than $10,000 or imprisoned not more than 5 years. That piece was quoted in the letter that went to Elon Musk. And then the DOJ election crimes manual specifies the bribe may be anything having monetary value, including cash, liquor, lottery chances, and welfare benefits such as food stamps. So that's just sort of what was being cited. I don't know if the election crimes manual was cited in the letter that was sent, but yeah, so he's on notice. And then here's the thing, Renato, he did not award, I think he awarded $1 million on Monday. On Tuesday, he got the letter on Wednesday. They did not award $1 million prize on Wednesday, but then they did again award one last night.
So it's interesting, right, that the Justice Department provided a letter. And I think the reason they did that, Asha, is to make it much easier for them to prove the mental state of Elon Musk. Because, he's going to say, obviously, I had no idea. I was just trying to help people vote. I was just trying to get people registered. I had no idea I was doing anything wrong. This is commonly done, or, try to muddy the waters a little bit about it. In this way, they say, look, this clearly violates the law. We're putting you on notice. That was the point of it. They wanted this to potentially be an exhibit at a trial if they were going to go and prosecute. And essentially what happened, you said there's a 1-day pause. What I suspect happened is that Elon Musk went to his lawyers, said, okay, what's the risk of prosecution here? They gave him a ballpark of what the risk was and how to mitigate the risk and so on and so forth. And then he felt more comfortable after getting an opinion letter from those lawyers or some guidance from those lawyers to go forward. And I suspect what they told him would be, this is going to be a challenge to prosecute. There's going to be, it's going to be very expensive and difficult for the Justice Department. And obviously that's only going to happen if Trump loses, because if Trump wins, he's certainly not going to be prosecuting Elon Musk. He's going to be hugging and dancing and jumping up and down with Elon Musk like he was on stage. And so he's comfortable with the risk.
Right. And his lawyers are the Gober Group, PLLC. I want to call it the Goober Group, but I won't. The Gober Group. And this is from a great piece by our friend Lisa Rubin at MSNBC, where she did a little bit of a deep dive. So the Gober Group is founded by attorney Chris Gober, who represents a bunch of different conservatives, including Ted Cruz, Ben Shapiro. His biography, according to Rubin, touts his dozens of wins before the FEC. And he has a client base of dozens of U.S. senators and representatives. And he has connections to 2 Supreme Court justices, John Roberts and Justice Alito. So, I think in addition to the legal advice, I am guessing that Elon Musk also feels that he's covered to some degree, like in terms of, politically, maybe judicially at the Supreme Court, who knows? So I'm just throwing that out there.
I think no matter what lawyer was advising Elon Musk, they would tell him that the Justice Department is going to have pause about bringing this lawsuit, particularly this close to the election, or an indictment this close to the election, that there's no risk if Trump gets elected. The risk is only if Trump isn't elected and Harris becomes president and there's a different attorney general. And in that circumstance, there's still a bunch of defenses he can raise. And he's going to, I assume, he's got some strategy that he's going to use to say why he thinks this is legal. But the bottom line is, ultimately, people who are as rich as Elon Musk can take risks that most of us would never take. Because I suspect, Asha, if you got a letter saying whatever practice you were having with your business was potentially of crime, you would take that very seriously. It would change and upend your entire life.
Yeah, and I would get that letter if I was giving away free lemonade on my driveway for people who voted.
For sure. And I do one point.
You know what I'm saying? And then
yes,
and I would be, intimidated into not doing that, because I'm not going to go against DOJ now or 3 months from now. But as you said, Elon Musk can afford to do that. And more importantly, Renato, I think that it also kind of gets to the fact that the harm is already done by that point, in the sense of what we don't want. We want people to vote based on their own convictions because they want to vote, they want to register, not because they're getting any kind of influence or nudges, explicitly, subconsciously, or whatever in any particular direction. But what is going to happen is even if Harris wins, even if Elon Musk is prosecuted, he's already the effect of what he wants has already happened. The harm to the integrity of our election has already happened. Like, that won't be undone. It's a purely deterrent effect in order for this law to be effective.
I think that's right. And I will just say the calculus here is not one that I think any prudent person would take. Like, in other words, even with all the risks that I told you, I think most people would not take the risk of being prosecuted for this kind of gain. There are other ways of achieving a result here for Donald Trump, and Elon Musk is doing that by just plowing money into TV ads and online ads and other things. One thing that I will say, just to be clear, is I do think that the guidance from DOJ is not only right, but I think I think it'd be very hard to argue otherwise, because you could imagine a circumstance if giving you $1 or $7 or an ice cream cone in exchange for you registering to vote or voting is a crime. Well, giving you a 1 in 4 chance at money or 1 in 5 chance or 1 in 10 chance, it's economically the same thing. And if you allow people to do that, they're just gonna, of course, that's what it'll always be. Well, I'll tell you what, if you vote, I'll give you a 1 in 10 chance at $1 million, a 1 in 10 chance at $1,000, whatever it might be. And so I don't really think that is going to be the defense that Musk comes up with here.
Yes. And to your point about it not being a strategy that most people would do, I mean, even Ben and Jerry's, which I assume is a company that has a lot of money, they didn't even get a letter from DOJ as far as I'm aware. They were just doing it, and it got reported on. As soon as they got a whiff that it might be running afoul of election laws, they stopped doing it, and they just started giving away free ice cream cones to everybody, which is totally legal, instead of only people who came in with an I voted sticker. So there's also, I think, this idea that people who are, I don't know, it feels like this kind of law is not only about deterrence, so people have to be scared of the consequences, but also it rests on a certain consensus or agreement that we all kind of want our elections to be, to have integrity. So people will kind of voluntarily comply when they know that they might be pushing up against it. Does that make sense?
I think that, yeah, of course. It's not just a free ice cream cone is fairly innocuous. But if you get to a spot where people are all getting paid to vote or paid to register, things can start getting out of control really quickly, where you have essentially, let's say, you could pick either party. Even let's just to flip it. I mean, you have Democrats going into areas that are high, percentage Democrat, right? Big cities and so forth, and basically trying to go door to door and paying people to vote. This has actually been an issue that the Republicans often have been more fervent about or concerned about than the Democrats, in terms of putting a stop to this sort of practice. You don't want money to influence politics in this way. And the crazy thing, of course, to a lot of people listening is, well, geez, there's so much influence in politics anyway, right? There's so much money floating around. But I do think the distinction matters. And that's why it's a bizarre choice by him to do this. I don't even think this is the best use of his money if he wants to help Trump win. I mean, sort of a wasteful way as far as I'm concerned. But it's nonetheless, it shows you that for some people, they really disregard the law, because not just at Ben and Jerry's, but I mean, I represent people all the time who, thought that whatever they saw out there was silly, or this wasn't an issue, and they get themselves in a lot of trouble, and they end up spending, millions of dollars in legal fees, and you have their life upended and sometimes face really severe consequences. And with Elon Musk, you have somebody who's absurdly rich and just doesn't give an F about the law, about how he's perceived, about
About
maybe,
democracy.
yeah.
I think there is a question of whether DOJ could go to court and ask for an injunction against further, money being given away, and or maybe force the money that's been given back or something like that. I mean, that seems like to me the right course of action at this point, because I don't think that then obligates them to prosecute it later. But it puts an immediate stop to the harm that the law is actually trying to prevent.
Yeah, it also might get Musk to change his tactics. But the FEC just does not act as aggressively as the DOJ does. And I think, the FEC is a commission that is traditionally very careful. So I am, not bullish on the FEC or DOJ really taking much action here.
So you don't think DOJ could ask for an injunction? It would have to come from FEC? It was the public integrity section that sent the letter to him.
I don't think they will. I think DOJ is going to be very reluctant to do anything this close to the election. The FEC may try to do something, but they're too timid. My prediction is really nothing comes out of this, and Musk is able to get away with doing what he wants to do. And I've got to say, I hate making these kinds of predictions. I know that I'm often a downer, but most of my predictions, if not all, along these lines, the downer sort of predictions have come true because the system just doesn't work the way that most people expect it to.
So annoying.
It's annoying, but that's the reality. And ultimately, the way to solve that problem is to get out and vote. That's the bottom line. So, Asha, let's turn to our next story. I know you're jet lagged, but this definitely had to wake up and catch your attention because it is right up your alley. But it is absolutely shocking from my perspective.
Yes, this is crazy. So basically, Elon Musk has been having Pootie calls with Vladimir Putin since like 2022. And the Wall Street Journal reported this, that there have been, I guess, several conversations between Musk and Putin where they've discussed, among other things, uh, his Starlink satellites, um, where to whether to keep them operational. I mean, there's all kinds of crazy stuff. And it's just astonishing to me. I think there's one line in the Wall Street Journal reporting that Putin asked him to, I think, disable the Starlink satellites over Taiwan as a favor to Xi or something like that. I mean, it's going directly counter to our foreign policy and strategic national security interests. And that's a big problem. This is a government contractor who has top secret clearances and also access to sensitive information about our military as a result.
Yeah, I mean, it even goes beyond that as far as I'm concerned. I really think that we as a nation have become reliant on Elon Musk and his companies for our own national security.
100%. I don't even okay, can we just stop there? Because I feel like that's the question that no one, like, I don't have a good answer to. Like, I get that he has, this cutting edge technology and this private company. Why hasn't our military just like, I mean, I don't know. I don't know, why are we dependent? Why, even if he has the technology, has the control of that, as to the extent that it's being used in places where, our military interests are involved. Like, why is he in control of it, is my point. You know what I'm saying? It's just giving,
Yeah.
like, I don't understand how that works. I mean, when Lockheed Martin or whoever makes, weapons for Department of Defense, like, they make them they hand them over, and then they're the property of the Department of Defense. I don't think like some CEO at Lockheed Martin is deciding where the planes can go to or whatever. You know what I'm saying? It makes no sense to me that he has this much operational and tactical control over something that is so important for our strategic interests.
I agree with you. I mean, I just don't think it's defensible. It's concerning to me as an American, putting aside any legal issues. Our space program is totally reliant right now on Elon Musk and his companies. To me, the satellites, the ease of communication in the battlefield, um, we rely on Musk for those satellites. We rely on Musk for that communication capability. And it's very concerning because if you recall, Asha, this isn't the first time that this has come up. During the Russia-Ukraine war, there were calls on Musk to shut down Ukraine's capability to use those satellites for communication purposes. And there was a real question, would he allow Ukraine's military to continue to have access to Starlink so that they could communicate, not only defensively, but for potential offensive operations into Russian territory? And look, whatever one thinks about, what America's position should be in that war, the idea that a private businessman is making that decision about literally the geopolitical balance of power, what an army can do in war that directly impacts U.S. interests, it's very alarming. And you have Musk literally negotiating with an adversary of the United States and considering a favor to Putin that could act contrary to U.S. interests. It could spark a war in China between China and Taiwan that could totally undermine U.S. strategic interests. So I think it's very concerning.
Yeah. So, on the point about Ukraine, from the Wall Street Journal article, it says that in September of 2022, Ukrainian military operatives weren't able to use Starlink terminals to guide sea drones to attack a Russian naval base in Crimea. And then his company extended restrictions on the use of Starlink in offensive operations by Ukraine. And this is apparently because Musk felt that that could lead to a nuclear war. Like, again, why do we care what he thinks? Like, that's not, I don't know. I don't feel like that's his call. And it undermines our military goals, our national security goals. It just doesn't make any sense. Russian troops also began using Starlink terminals brought in through third countries at a massive scale, undermining one of Ukraine's few battlefield advantages. He denies that. But this is all coming from intelligence people in our government, which brings up another issue beyond how problematic this is. Because, clearly there are people who know about these conversations in our intelligence community, and it's curious to me that they're kind of talking about it. Like, there must be concern. And maybe this is a way of getting it out there so he stops.
Yeah, I suspect that this was a purposeful leak because there was some sort of event or development that concerned someone. It's odd timing, right before the election. I'm sure from a Musk perspective, it's like this is trying to hamstring him or hurt Trump or whatever. But the bottom line is, it's something that there really should be a bipartisan consensus on and an inquiry on, because we do have a consensus in this country on a couple points. I think there's a consensus that it's in the U.S. interest for Ukraine to exist in its present form, not to have the Russians rewarded for their aggression. And there's also a bipartisan consensus that the United States has some obligation to defend Taiwan, even though we support a one China policy officially as a country. And if we have some businessman using his technology that he obtained, I believe a lot of his technology is obtained with either some support from the government, and he certainly has contracts with the government, why we're not doing more to ensure that he's acting within the United States national interest.
And as I mentioned, he has a top secret security clearance. So he should have been reporting these contacts. I mean, anyone else with a top secret security clearance who is talking to Vladimir Putin would have to go to their security officer and be like, I had a Putin call last night. I had, this is what we talked about. Clearly, he hasn't done that. So there's that whole security risk. And on top of that, there's no doubt that Putin has recordings of their conversations. So whatever Musk is saying in public, where he's denying it and all of this stuff, the more he does that and the more it's at odds with what actually happened, that now Russia has even more leverage over him. I mean, it's crazy when you think about it in that way as well.
Yeah, it is. It is really something, and I think it really goes to an issue that I think it ties together with what we talked about earlier, Asha. A lot of our listeners or viewers on YouTube wonder why it is that certain people live under different rules and laws than the rest of us. And I think it really, here's an example of someone who's not Donald Trump, but is also fabulously wealthy, very powerful, and a risk taker, and just doesn't give a crap. And as a result, he just does all sorts of things that would be unimaginable to the average person.
Right. And to, again, with a parallel to our first segment, this does violate the law. There is something called the Logan Act, which prohibits private citizens from negotiating with foreign governments to undermine U.S. policy with, if they have a controversy or dispute with that government. This came up early in Trump's first term with the calls that Michael Flynn was making to Russian ambassador Sergei Kislyak. Was it Kislyak? Yeah, Sergei Kislyak about the UN votes that the United States was going to be voting on various issues. And the point there is that you don't want, we speak with one voice, and that voice is the sitting administration. We don't want, private individuals going and undermining what our country is trying to do. And the intent of the Logan Act and the conduct that it prohibits squarely fits exactly this kind of situation. A lot of people have talked about, though, the Logan Act has only been, that it's been prosecuted twice and they didn't get convictions, and they act as though this is some dead letter. But actually, our friend Ryan Goodman wrote a really great opinion piece back in 2017 that said, it's true that it hasn't been criminally prosecuted, but it has been enforced in various ways by several different administrations, even up to Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, it's a case that is now, I think it's a statute that's never been successfully prosecuted, if I remember
Right,
correctly.
right.
Often discussed, rarely prosecuted, right? It's been around since the 1700s or something like that, long time. But I think that it really, to me, I think we could use another look, and I think we really, to me, what this should do is it should spark a discussion about U.S. citizens and their involvement with foreign governments and adversaries. Now that we have a foreign adversary in Russia and maybe even China and others who want to interfere in our elections, who want to interfere in our governance. And, candidly, we have private citizens now, Asha, who are much more powerful than the framers of our Constitution would have ever considered. I don't think they ever considered that we would have like one person in the United States who would control the musket supply or something like that. Like where you essentially couldn't wage war, or your ability to wage war would be very much diminished if you didn't have the support of some private individual.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the closest that we've gotten is the industrial titans during the Gilded Age, who controlled the railroads and steel and whatever. And I mean, there we ended up with anti-monopoly legislation. And we brought those under kind of regulations to limit their power. But I agree with you that I don't recall that that power being utilized directly to interfere with our electoral processes. And that's what these social media billionaires like Musk are able to do. And I think it's really important, it's linked to his Pootie calls, because you have to wonder, is he, especially if there is some leverage over him, is he acting at the direction or control of Russia? Because that would violate the Foreign Agent Registration Act, which, by the way, has been enforced quite aggressively in recent months. Has he disclosed classified information to Russia that he has access to? That would violate the Espionage Act. So I don't know. I think it does highlight, though, that we get caught up in like, what law does this violate? And sometimes this is the difference between criminal and national security interests, is something might not rise to a criminal violation or may not be able to be prosecuted, and it doesn't make it any less of a national security risk.
Yeah, I think that's right. And to me, the issues here are much broader than a criminal violation. I don't even view this from a legal lens. I view this as sort of, wow, this is a huge problem for our national security. Because I agree with you. I think the concern is Elon Musk compromised? Does he have interests in Russia that are divergent from the United States? And it's really problematic, of course, when you pair that with his support for Donald Trump. I mean, here's a guy who's suddenly gotten very enthusiastic about Donald Trump now, who's tied at the hip with him. And of course, Donald Trump has, and what I think his own aides have described as a bizarre fascination with Vladimir Putin, or affinity for Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, and just to round out this discussion on Musk and how the crazy times that we are in, this guy was recently invited to give a talk at West Point to West Point cadets. Like, yeah. I don't even understand that, but especially juxtaposed against the fact that the Naval Academy recently disinvited Ruth Ben-Ghiat, who is an NYU professor and an expert on authoritarianism. There was pressure from right-wing groups that, she's anti-Trump and that she's too political. So they rescinded a lecture, an invitation to give a lecture, warning about historical uses of the military in fascist regimes. But they have let a dude who's actively campaigning for a current presidential candidate and who is in conversations with a hostile foreign adversary to come address cadets at a service academy. That's where we are, folks.
I think that Elon Musk has radically changed his persona, his stances, and I don't really think that perception of him is completely caught up to that. I think it's a broader issue. I mean, Elon Musk isn't being criticized enough for the stances he's taking, for the public statements that he makes, for the abuses of his platform. I mean, shutting down criticism of one party and not another. And here,
spreading mis and disinformation. I mean, right. Going back to, I don't know if you remember this, during the attack on Nancy Pelosi's husband, he was the main node that amplified the conspiracy theory that this was, a gay lover or whatever that came, and this was a rising out of some spat. He is the one who amplified that.
Right. I think that, and I just don't think that there's enough focus on that. I don't know why that is, if it's because a lot of people have financial interests that they're holding back on that, but it's a concern.
For sure.
So, Asha, before we go, I think we're both a little jet lagged. I don't know if you've noticed any of my yawns during the episode. It's not because of anything you're saying, but it's definitely hard to fly in at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yes, I returned from Indonesia on Wednesday, and I'm kind of messed up. I got up at 5 yesterday. I woke up at 3 in the morning today. I have a Halloween party to go to tonight. I need to take a nap before I go.
Okay, we should be talking about Halloween costumes, so we'll do that next week.
Okay.
But yeah, today is my first day back at my home since September 8th. I was out in LA for this criminal trial, and the jury's still deliberating, which is always good sign for the defense. But I just came back last night very late when the jury decided they weren't going to return a verdict yesterday. So, but it is just hard to adjust when your schedule's off and you're coming off of something like that. I always try to do my trips at a time where I'm not busy with work or jumping in on things. And here it's like trying to jump into these topics. It's not always easy.
Yeah. Indonesia is a little bit brutal. Like it's actually, I think the trip was 27 hours total.
Wow. That's like the
With
entirely
with
opposite
the
side of the
layover.
world, right?
Yes. Yeah. It's 13 hours ahead in Bali.
Okay. We got to just, I don't want to take too long in this, but how awesome was Bali?
Bali was really awesome. You can see a fun Instagram video on my Instagram page.
Okay. I'll check it out.